of it. That AI has changed the way I have taught my students, or probably my way of teaching has changed a lot since the advent of AI. Let me move on to the second question. This is some right. I'm sorry. The second question is this: that of three occasions, uh, students fear the most in an educational setting. You need not give all the three, but one of the three occasions you can try and put it in the chat box, please. Go ahead. What, according to you, are the occasions where students fear a lot in the educational field? Not into the classroom, but education in total. Right, very good. Mr. Cruz has said that it's about exams, results, examination, exams, assessment, or probably interviews. Okay. Right, seminars, for presentations, for continuous assessment that happen into the classroom. So delivering a speech, true, right. Whenever they get onto a stage, uh, they fear the public. Pa- right, parent-teachers meeting. Right, Miss Marina has also connected it with the results. Right. By far, I understand that all of you have understood that one of the occasions where students fear, is that of exams. Right. Now, let me go back to the question I asked first, and that is about the most important factor that influences a teacher, especially with the teaching practices. I think you might have seen the answer itself. Now, there have been umpteen studies to prove that yours and mine, the teaching practice of ours, is not driven by the demands and needs of the students, nor is it driven by the content of a syllabus, but it is mostly dictated. I underline that word, dictated by examinations. In other words, the way I teach depends on the way I test. Therefore, exams are the ones that directly or indirectly has a larger say in the way I practice teaching or I give my input to my students. There's been again enough studies to suggest that unless and until we change the examination practices, we won't be able to change the way we teach, and we won't be able to change the way our students learn inside and outside the classrooms. The best example would be the schools, where there is a direct connection between exams and teaching learning practices. Most often, we find that students are not taught for learning, but students are rather taught for scoring high marks in the examinations. Those who've got kids at home would understand that by now the class 12 or class 10, syllabus the teachers might have already started teaching, despite the fact that the students are in class 11 and not class 12, class 9 and not class 10. And therefore, we know for sure that the stakes are so high as far as examinations are concerned. That is number one. So, my rationale here for having chosen this topic, portfolio assessment for language acquisition, is that you can change methodology, you can change the classroom setting, you can bring in AI, you can bring in any other thing under the sun, but unless and until you change the way you test your students, you won't be able to change the way you teach and let the students learn because of your teaching, sometimes even despite our teaching. That is number one. Number two, the question I asked is that of the occasions where students fear the most in the educational field. And that is again connected with what I had already displayed. One is that of before the exam, the second occasion is during the exam, and the third occasion is after the exam. Again, we find that the fear, if at all students have any, they are closely connected with that of examinations, nothing else but examinations. So, what is very important here is to understand the fact that teaching and learning, the curricula, the syllabus we have in the curricula, and even the extended curricular practices that we have a lot to do with the way we look at assessments or exams or tests. That is number one. But however, we must understand uh, that whenever there are results, we have some reports of students committing suicide. Looks like India is one of the leading contributors to this, contributors within quotes, that around 2,248 students, somewhere in 2022. This reported, a consolidated report came much later, after 2 years in 2024, that they died immediately after the results were announced. There were occasions where, someone had very rightly pointed out that the students fear the most when there is parent-teacher meet. There are occasions where students try to commit suicide immediately after the parent-teachers meet. So that's something that we have to understand, that exams come with a lot of anxiety, a lot of expectations, and sometimes with lots of disappointments. But quite interestingly, some of you might, after having listened to me for the last 5 to 10 minutes or so, might be wondering, where in the world are these students, such students exist in tertiary education? Because in colleges, we hardly find students who are tensed, who take exams as seriously as school students do. Now, there are some students, but only a handful of students actually come under this particular category where they're very serious about studies. I vividly remember my own days as a student where I stood in a line, trying my best to convince my teacher that uh, I deserve 1 mark more than the grand total I received, which means to get a mark more from my teacher, I have to stand, convince him, sometimes even plead, cry, weep in front of him or her to get the mark that I thought I deserved. Today, the scenario is slightly different, that you hand over the answer scripts, and then students seem to be least bothered about coming back to us to clarify why they got the marks. They didn't get the marks they deserved. So therefore, as soon as they enter colleges, my experience, which may be the experiences of the majority of the audience here, is that of there is a lack of seriousness among students. Though we know that exams are important, though we know that exams create a lot of anxiety among students, but looks as if that anxiety is on the decline when it comes to the collegiate education. But what we instead see into the classrooms are this: there are students who are easily distracted, though I paint a very kind of a pessimistic, figure here. But and I think I would appreciate if someone has a difference of opinion here, that students today are very easily distracted. Not, that does not mean that the past that we were not distracted. We were, but now it's much more. And that the study habits of students, sometimes we wonder whether they actually study or not, and that it reflects on the score that they get in exams, sometimes very poor, most often even poorer than that, and that they are least bothered about the marks they score. And finally, there's a lack of, kind of an engagement, involvement among students when it comes to classroom participation. Now, all these five and much more, if I ask you to, type in what other things that you get to see inside the classroom, I think there'll be a lot more in the same line, where we find that it's very difficult to keep the students engaged, keep the students glued to what you do inside the classroom. There are a few reasons I've somehow managed to get. Again, most of which are based on my own experience, for the past, uh, 2.5 decades or so. The reasons could be, I stand corrected if you've got difference of opinion. Is The first one is that when it comes to uh, the the process of curriculum design. See, there are many stakeholders, starting from the employers to the employees, who are our actually current students. Maybe future they may become the employees. That we do take into considerations the feedback of the stakeholders, the employers, the industry experts, the academicians, parents, our alumni, and of course the theoretical considerations, the previous syllabi, and a little bit of a research into the other universities and colleges, and what we get as a feedback through assessments and so on and so forth, and finally the attainment. And of course, all of these are part of I would say, vicious circle, which ultimately ends up, framing the curriculum that we have. But if you notice very critically, just examine it critically, you'll find that those students get their own say in curriculum design because they are part of the board of studies, and we also get the exit poll from them, and then do some cosmetic changes in the curriculum. But we do understand that the students we have in the classrooms hardly feel that they have been taken into confidence as far as whatever happens inside a classroom. To a large extent, one of the reasons why students don't engage is the fact that they don't see any immediate contribution they have to make to the designing of the curriculum. That is one. And two, I would like to recall my first introduction to portfolio assessment, the one on screen. The name is on display. Professor Carey Smith. He was then working in one of the universities in Israel, but right now she is in the Norwegian University. Now, I may take a little bit of a time, but I understand that this is very important as far as the very perspective that I have towards portfolio assessment and assessment in particular. Is that of once, I think I was doing my MPhil there in English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. Then, when I was a student, it was called, a Central Institute of English and Foreign Languages, CEFL. Our course director, Professor Rama Matthews, she was the coordinator of an international conference organized, and Professor Carey Smith was one of the key note speakers. Now, we had the privilege of listening to her, not as part of the international, conference, but she was brought into our classroom by the coordinator to address the MPhil scholars. Now, during which that was the first time I happened to see someone presenting using PowerPoint. That is my first exposure to PowerPoint was that in 2000 or 2001. And that the topic that she discussed with us was portfolio assessment. Now, during which she recalled an incident with her own daughter who was given an assignment. Now, the assignment, since it had a religious tone, I've slightly modified it, adapted it to suit the audience I have here. Now, let's assume that the assignment was uh, on Julius Caesar, Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, and that we know that the most important part, the pinnacle of that uh, particular play by Shakespeare is Mark Antony's speech, that funeral oration by Mark Antony. Now, the teacher gave an assignment to the students, asking them to assume that Brutus was given another chance. Let me repeat that we know that Mark Antony delivered a wonderful, impactful speech, and that turned the tide against Brutus and in favor of Mark Antony and, of course, Julius Caesar. But here, the assumption was that Brutus, after the oration by Mark Antony, has got another opportunity to make his case, and then he comes in front of the audience and starts addressing the audience. But the interesting fact that she shared with us was that her daughter went up to her and asked 3 questions, which we conveniently ignore as teachers. The first question was that, Mom, my teacher has given this assignment, but then I have a few doubts. That one, should I draft a speech which I think the Roman citizens would want to listen to? That is the first doubt of the kid. Or should I draft a speech which I think my teacher wants Brutus to deliver, or to draft a speech that I think Brutus should deliver? Now, there are 3 important perspectives here. One, that of the perspective of the audience, and 2, that of the perspective of the teacher, and 3, that of the perspective of the student. Most often, whatever assessments we have, right from the preparation of the question paper to the assessment or evaluation of the answer script, most often it is the perspective of the teacher that counts the most than that of the perspective of the student. And I think that the kid would have, on the expert advice of a mom, would have gone in for the second option, where the student, despite the fact that her heart would have been in the third option of expressing her own self, or getting into the shoes of Brutus and expressing her own self, but she would have actually sacrificed it for the perspective of a teacher. Therefore, you don't see the first choice of a child being expressed, but it's actually the choice or the assumed choice of the teacher that gets its place on paper. You can ask yourself this question: have I, over the years, helped my students think on their own, A, and B, feel confident of what they think is valid enough to get a score that they think is decent enough in the educational scenario? That's the second important aspect of why students disengage themselves in the teaching learning process. Again, you can find the connect between what happens in the class and the assessment practices. Now, this is a visual that most of you in the educational field might have come across, probably 10 to 15 years old. This actually is not a not an AI generated visual or someone's, it's figment of an imagination. It's actually real visual which was used in the Bangkok University. It's called actually the anti-cheating helmet. And look at how serious we are with regard to the assessment practices of ours. Now, this again is another cartoon that most of you might have come across, in the educational field. And this is exactly what happens as far as assessment is concerned or testing is concerned in a class. I'm right now using assessment, testing, and examinations interchangeably, which they are different in their own ways. I'll explain that a little later. So this is what happens, that we have one test or one pair of shoes fitting all, and that we expect the students to fit into the assessment practices that we have designed for them. And the assessment practice actually has been at least 2 centuries old, that though there has been some change, but that change has been quite minimal and sometimes ignorable too. But these are all, we can call it as the byproducts of what we call the meritocracy. Now, we know for sure that the meritocracy is linked with the socio-economic status too. You cannot ask a fish to climb the tree, and then if at all the fish fails to climb the tree, say that no, the fish is actually not skilled enough to climb a tree. The fish has got its own skills. Elephant has got its own skills. A monkey has got its own skills. A seal has got its own skills. A crow has got its own skills. Therefore, we understand that one particular way of assessing our students, in a way, we do injustice to the variety of skills that the students possess when they enter the classrooms. That takes me to the most famous quote by Einstein that connected with this particular, quote that, you know, most often the fish would actually end its life thinking that it is stupid. There may be some of us here. Had the assessment practice been different, you would have done much better than what you have done, in the exams that have been conducted over the years. And that takes me to Chomsky's very important speech. This is taken from Understanding Power by Chomsky. It's a collection of speeches. One of the speeches has this particular quote that any standardized assessment is used as a tool by those in power to weed out people, A, who belong to a different strata of life, who can think independently on their own, who cannot be easily made submissive to others. That said, that we understand that the standardization of tests, the moment we say standardized, now what is given more importance is that of reliability and not that of validity. These are two important aspects of testing: reliability and validity. If you take the high stake assessments, let's take the ones that most of us might have gone through, the net set exams. Now, all these net set exams today have become objective type net exam. The only reason that this has now been converted to objective type is that of bringing in reliability. Reliability means that irrespective of whomsoever evaluates an answer script, that you get almost the same score. That the standard deviation may not be more, that even if there is some, that can be ignored for the sake, because it's very, very minimal that you can ignore that difference in terms of the difference between one assessor, assessor 2, assessor 3, and assessor 4 is the only reason. And that it's easy that you can just feed into the system and then the computer does everything for us. Very easy. But what happens is that by testing the teaching skill through a written test, and that too by darkening the circles, I'm afraid that the validity, that the test is not valid at all. Validity looks at, does the test what it intends to test? That a multiple choice question or multiple choice examination cannot test the teaching, research, or teaching and research skills of a teacher. That requires a different kind of assessment altogether. So that's about the second reason why students, find it very difficult to connect with the teaching learning practices of arts. It's been wonderful, to see that things are changing, that people have started understanding the importance of skills, importance of competence now, that we have to focus more on competence than the other aspects of education. It's around, you can see it all for yourself that the educational institutions today have not lived up to the skill expectations of the country. So if at all we want the students inside our classrooms skilled, then obviously we have to change the way we test our students. So to give you a quick recap of it, that we've seen the importance of washback. Washback refers to how assessment or testing impacts the teaching learning practices. And two, how tests build anxiety. And three, however, higher education is slightly different scenario altogether. The reality is that students don't seem to take seriously. And then I've listed a few reasons why there is a lack of engagement among students. So let me briefly pause here before I enter into the topic for today and invite some questions from your end. You're welcome. The organizers can unmute the microphone of all, and you're welcome to ask or clarify your doubts, please. Can you I'll just refresh the screen because there's some scribble there on the screen. So I'll just refresh it and come back to you. Can you just do something about it? I can see that there's some uh, a kind of a doodling on the screen.
We'll do it.
Could you please refresh the screen?
Sure, sir. Sure,
Yeah,
sir.
please. Yeah, you're welcome to ask questions, please. I just forgot to disable this particular option. Anyway, so questions, please. If you've got questions, feel free to unmute and ask. Or you can just drop it in the chat box too. Thank you. If you do, kindly feel free to ask your questions.
Dear participants, you can unmute yourselves and raise the questions, or else mention that question in the chat box. We have granted the permission to unmute. You can unmute yourselves and raise the questions. If you need clarity, you can ask the questions.
Right, we'll proceed if there aren't questions. Yeah.
So there is a question.
Yeah, right. Ms. Sridevi has asked, at present students are facing a lot of challenges, especially when the basic things, that's a bit ambiguous, basic. Could you please throw some light on that? I'd be more happy if the questions are connected to what I have discussed so far. Basics in terms of language or in terms of infrastructure. Yeah, and I've indirectly hinted at why students lack in the basics, because see, everything starts in schools, and that the school education is mostly memory driven. Of course, memory is not bad, memory is good, but it's rote learning that happens in the classroom. So therefore, if something is rote learned, that you cannot expect the students to use English for functional purposes, because the reason why students study is that to score marks. And that how can they score marks? They can only score marks that by learning the essays, paragraphs by heart, and then reproduce it in the exam halls. If that be the case, then that's not going to help them. Is one of the reasons why students do not have the fundamentals in place as far as language proficiency is concerned. That's what I said, that unless we change the way we test, which which is about communication, which is about skills, which is about competence, we won't be able to help our students do something better with the language we give to them inside the classrooms. Right. Thank you so much, ma'am, for that question. And with that, I'll proceed with the rest of the topics. Now, we discussed uh, the problem we have right now, what ails the educational system. And of course, this is to my personally speaking, the most important factor. That is the assessment part or the examination part. That uh, everything centers around the way we test our students. So it's we have to change the way we test so that we can change the way we teach, so that the students can change the way they learn, and that they can change the way they use the language for communicative purposes. So with that, let me move on to the next part of it, that is about the topic itself, portfolio assessment for language acquisition. So I've underlined the necessity for bringing in assessment as an important aspect of today's input. Now, portfolio assessment for language acquisition, I understand that, unlike literature, ELT warrants a bit of an explanation even of the fundamental terms. All right, I'll respond to this question a little bit later. So thank you, uh, Mr. Veerarag Valu. I'll get back to this question. Kindly remind me of it, when we come to the next Q&A part of it. We'll have it quickly after. So this is about portfolio assessment for language acquisition. Now, there are three terms that has to be, elaborated upon. One is the very term portfolio. The other is assessment. I've already said that assessment is different from testing, and testing is different from examination. And that the third one is that of acquisition. I'll start with the third one, which I consider somewhat common to all of you present here. Most of you might have heard of this topic, but some of those who are new to this topic, I think I must talk about this. When it comes to assessment, there is a slight difference between acquisition and learning. Now, some call it, language acquisition. Some call it as language learning. And this particular distinction between acquisition learning is not that very much seriously discussed now as it was a few decades ago. But still, the reason why I used acquisition here is that most of our testing practices are geared towards learning part, where now the process of it is highly conscious, and that you are aware of the fact that you are learning a language, and that it happens in a formal setup, and that the teaching of the English language is based mostly on the rules and grammatical aspects of it. But then, whereas acquisition is totally oriented towards how we learned our mother tongue, that it is subconscious, it is meaningful, it is based on meaningful interaction, the way mother talks to a child, and that everything, every communication has a valid communicative purpose, and therefore the focus is mostly on communication. But then, as I said, that it's only to just underline the fact that the focus is more on acquisition, because assessment aligns mostly with acquisition than with learning. But even if After a while, I use learning, take it as part of acquisition, but it's important that we also know the distinction between acquisition and learning, very clearly stated by Stephen Krashen. Now, having said that, for learning or for acquisition to take place, engagement is important, learner engagement is important. And this learner engagement, to a large extent, is not, you know, one dimensional, it is actually multidimensional. There are at least four dimensions to engagement, of which the first dimension is cognition. That when I learn, my brain is involved. When I learn, my thinking ability is actually triggered, is one dimension of engagement. But then this dimension alone is not enough for acquisition to take place. That the other dimension, which is the behavioral dimension, which is connected with the body of it. See, we have the brain, and we also have a physical brain. That there are students who can learn only when they move. So therefore, if you want to engage your students, that students should not be static in a classroom, but that they have to be moving when then in the classroom so that engagement takes place. The third one is quite emotional, that unless until you emotionally connect with something, you won't be able to engage yourself properly. That we know very well that in schools, most of the times that, or even in colleges, that something that we like the most, not only because we like the subject or the discipline, but because we also like the teacher the most. There's an emotional connect with the teacher that makes a student engage in whatever happens. So if we have to guarantee engagement, it has to, your teaching learning practices have to appeal to cognition, have to appeal to the behavioral aspects of it, the physique of it, the psychomotor aspect of it, and has to have some appeal to your heart, and finally something connected with the social aspect of it. Because we know that we are social animals, and that lots and lots of interaction is important. I think, right, or the first question I asked, most of you said that it is about engagement, interaction, classroom interaction, that actually is the heart of education. Therefore, we have to make sure that interaction takes place, some socializing takes place in the classroom to keep our students engaged. These four, maybe there may be a few more as well, but to my understanding, these are the four important dimensions that a teacher has to take into consideration to guarantee acquisition, language acquisition, if not knowledge, but at least a language which is more connected with skills. We have to have all these to take place. So for learning or for acquisition to take place, your classroom practices should be geared towards these four dimensions. Now, it's just quite interesting when I read this book, Recognition Without Reward. I just liked it very much because it has got all the important aspects of the four dimensions listed here. That learning occurs here. Learning is synonymous with acquisition. I believe that our students are involved in problem solving, constructing, investigating, creating, and all those things. They have to be indulging in. It looks like almost the Bloom's taxonomy. The K levels are, listed in this particular quote. That said, that let me also move on to the other aspect of, acquisition. That acquisition has to be unconscious, has to happen through communication. Two, that acquisition take into consideration multi-dimensional aspects of engagement. And three, that for acquisition to take place, we have to take into consideration the intelligences which are dominant in or among a student. Because we know that no two student is the same. Each one is unique, and that the way they learn, their learning preferences, their learning styles, their learning strategies vary from one to another. And therefore, it is important that we have to take into consideration the learner diversity. So therefore, my teaching should not be mono. My teaching should focus on a variety of input, It could be visual, it could be oral, it could be oral, it could even be other ways. Now, Howard Gardner, in his Frames of Mind, talks about 8 different ways in which students look at the world. 8 different ways in which students try to understand what happens in a classroom. And I think later on he added one more, and those 8 different ways are given here. Some are picture smart, some are music smart, some are body smart. All these smartness, at least one or two, someone will be very dominant. Now, some those people who are picture smart need not necessarily be nature smart, need not necessarily even be self smart, but then their dominant learning style would be that of visual. That anything that is visually appealing would be appealing to them as well. Those who are body smart are those people who cannot sit idle in a classroom. For them to learn is to move, and therefore your teaching learning practices should have something to do with the behavioral aspects of it too. So this has got only 8. I think the ninth one is existential, smartness or existential intelligence. Not much of study is done on that particular intelligence, but still that has again been considered one of the 9 different intelligences. He only says that these are 9, but there may be much more. Someone else would come up with some more in the future. So we understand that for acquisition to take place, we have to take into consideration multiple intelligences too. This takes me to my own experience with my student a few years ago. Now, look at this particular page. Can anyone tell me what exactly is this page? What is this page all about? Any guess? Kindly use the chat box for your response. What exactly is this? Any guess? Right, tsunami. Right, and I'm right. That's a good one. Good beginning. See, remember, this actually is not about. Not. I'm not asking you what do you see, but then there is a visual there. You know what is this actually? What is this paper all about? Right. Those who've mentioned tsunami, probably you might not have seen tsunami. If you had seen, you might not be alive too. Anyway. Struggles. No, I'm not talking about what is drawn. I'm talking about the sheet. What is the sheet? Visual and oh no no. This is about what is this sheet? Where does it come from? This is not about the boats, about the man there, about some rocks there. This is about response from the
Answer
student.
sheet, sir.
Yeah, who said that? Of
Prabhu,
course,
sir.
this is actually Ms. Benita has responded as answer sheet. This actually is an answer sheet. Uh, any guess what could be the subject taught or assessed on? EVS, okay, good guess. Maybe SST. What does that mean? Is environment fine? Right, it's mostly towards EVS. Right? It's actually from social studies, right? This is actually a script of a student of mine named Silas. I think I've got his name right. Salesh or Silas. Uh, this is a mid-semester answer script from my own department. And the course that the student took the test in is British poetry. That was British poetry. And the question to which the student respond is, yeah. This was the question which. he ended up in this response of a student. This is a first year student. He just joined. And immediately after he joined, probably 1.5 months or so, we have the mid-semester test. And this answer script you have here is a product of that mid-semester test. Now you can easily understand, given your experience, why the student has drawn this, uh, as part of a question based on Matthew Arnold's Dover Beach. I think I was sharing this with one of the senior most professors, very committed and expert in literature. So he asked this question in the exams or the test, where they were asked to draw a comparison between Dover Beach and human misery, and the student has drawn this. Uh, quite interestingly, quite interestingly, that I gave him marks for this response because only if a student had understood the poem, he would be in a position to draw this. And the reason why the student drew this particular art was that there's this word called draw. Shamrida Yoga has already clearly stated. There is a word draw, but then, draw connotates different things. So the boy took the literal meaning of it and then he drew it. And what's quite interesting is that his language was not that bad. When I went through the answer script, his language was not that bad. And by all means, that I don't think the student was ignorant enough to think that the draw here meant literally draw and compare the human misery with that of nature. Then why did he draw? That had the student known that draw could also mean different, why should he take the risk of drawing? Is a question that I myself asked, for which I did not get the answer. But then after 2.5 semesters, when I met the same student in the final year, was when I got the answer. So I fondly, very jovially recalled that incident, and I told him when I distributed the answer script, told him that please don't repeat it. But the next time, if I find such answers, I wouldn't be, awarding marks for the answer. But we have never got an opportunity in our life as literature graduates to draw on our answer scripts. We've only been asked, we've only been asked to write or use language, because of course literature is all about language, but literature is not only about language. And that the students we have, you know, not all of them are very much interested in language. Some are very much interested in painting, drawing, sketching, and so on and so forth. But such students don't find a place or don't get any recognition in our classrooms because our assessments do not take these skills into consideration at all. When I met him, in the final semester, when I asked, I remember a student who drew, instead of writing. All the students in the class looked at the boy in the corner and said, "Sir, he is the one." And they requested me to have a look at his notebook. So with his permission, I did have a look at his notebook. And when I had a look at his notebook, this was what I found in his notebook. Now, these sketches were not sketches drawn at the luxury of his own room at home. These were drawn arguably in the classrooms. Maybe he might have drawn more in my classroom. A student with such skill, when he saw a word draw, obviously he would be tempted to draw despite the fact that he knew draw also meant to write, which was the primary choice of the setter or the question paper setter. Now, just imagine this is also literature. Just imagine that this is also part and parcel of a student who is in our classrooms. But then, are we flexible enough to accommodate such skills, which actually is part of the, you know, visual intelligence or picture smart student? So we have to acknowledge the fact that we have got a variety of students and they've got a plethora of skills with them, and that we as teachers should make sure that we exploit them in good sense and to make the best use of them and they get the best out of them as far as acquisition is concerned. So therefore, we understand that acquisition takes place when certain conditions are met. And that those conditions are that we have to make sure that communication takes place. We have to make sure that the students subconsciously use language, and that language is to only to some extent drawn towards the rules of the language, and that your input should cater to different dimensions of engagement and variety of intelligences as well. To some extent, this might guarantee maximum engagement of a student and probably and arguably though maximum engagement of the student as well, and maximum language acquisition of the student as well. So if you've got questions now, please go ahead and shoot them, preferably towards the acquisition part of it. There's one question already asked by a participant a while ago. I think that was on, the question goes like, even though they knew the answers, most of them feel inferior and afraid to state their opinion. What can be the solution? Yeah, I think again, I've indirectly said that that we don't give importance to the perspectives of the students. I think there have been studies. One of the notable studies was conducted in Japan, where they studied the academically, intelligent students, academically dominant, I would say, those students who did very well in scoring marks. They studied the level of self-esteem of those students, and they were to some extent, shocked to know that the students who scored high had low self-esteem. And when they studied further, they understood that the reason why the students who managed to score high and of course got the accolades of their peers, their teachers, parents, and so on and so forth, but had to live with low self-esteem was that, see, they scored the marks, but then the answers they gave were then not theirs, but that of somebody else's. Because most of the tests tested the knowledge of the students and hardly of the skills. And therefore, when they responded to the questions asked, they knew very well that their perspective did not count, but that of the different, the perspective of the teacher and the perspective which was already presented to them mattered the most. The reason why, even if they knew the answers, they don't feel like responding in the classrooms. I myself, even today, find it very difficult to make my students speak. It takes some time to make them participate in the classroom practices, because of the fact that they live all through their lives thinking that their answers, their perspectives have the least importance in the classroom. So therefore, if you want students to participate, make sure that they are confident and they know that the confidence emanates out of the fact that their opinions matter, their answers matter. Therefore, open-ended type of questions are much more important than that of the questions which have got one correct answers. Because that is where, if you've got multiple perspectives to a question asked, is when creativity flourishes. When creativity flourishes, automatically engagement comes in. So that could be my simple responds to, of course, it's a complex question and you cannot have an overnight answers to it, but still, that's the best I could do with regard to the question asked. Right. Mr. or Ms. Subodh has said that we are both born with skills, but you're forced to do completely opposite to it. So, what could be the solution? Now, the solution I started with the solution. Now, why are we forced to do just the opposite? That why is rote learning given importance? Why aren't skills given importance? Because assessment, testing gives primary importance to rote learning and not to skill development. So therefore, if your assessments are geared towards skill development, automatically the classrooms will also be the place where skills are developed and not rote learning is encouraged. So therefore, my solution to it is the moment you go back, try your best to change the way we assess our students. We are definitely born with different skills, not different intelligences is what he calls, or smartness with which we are actually born. So we sometimes are comfortable with that smartness when that particular input reaches us. Is there any scope to test all the aspects of learning in summative assessment? There is. It depends on how you look at summative assessment. If summative assessment complements formative assessment, there is a possibility. But if it doesn't complement formative assessment, now summative assessments have their own limitations. So therefore, if it is only summative assessment, doing away with formative assessment, summative assessments cannot do justice to assessing all that encompasses acquisition of a language, all that encompasses functional communication. That's a good question to ask, yes. Right. I think I'm so happy that many of you have started asking questions. So probably I'll move on to the next part of it, the third part of it. That is about explaining what assessment is. I'll go a bit quicker because I'm afraid that we may run out of time. This is what assessment is. The most important word here is assessment is a process. It's not a product. It's actually a process of evaluation. We assess or we evaluate the learning outcomes of the students. And the next important part is actually student learning. Assessment is not a tool meant to judge a student. Assessment is a tool meant to help a student learn better. Or assessment is meant to help understand a student better and help the student perform or learn, acquire, and perform better with the language, is what assessment is all about. When it comes to assessment, we'll have to juxtapose assessment with testing. Now, if you look at these two different, two different aspects of assessment, you can put it in 5 different aspects. Now, if you look at the nature of testing, testing is actually episodic, that it comes one after the other, but spread out in different way, different times, and it's very specific. Whereas assessment is a bit broad and it's actually continuous. So that's why we mostly call it as continuous assessment. And of course, the very word assessment itself, includes continuity. So the moment you utter the word assessment, it is continuous in nature. And 2, that of purpose. At testing, the objective of testing is to actually measure how well a student has performed. Whereas the objective of assessment is to actually improve teaching and therefore improve learning. And the focus is mostly on scores and comparing one student with that of another. We call that as norm referencing. I think I should not deviate much from that, but it's about norm referencing is about comparing one student with that of another. Therefore, when we assess when we go through the bundle of scripts, what do? We take a script, we assess, evaluate that script, and then that script becomes the not the benchmark, but the mark for us to say whether the next script is better than this or not. So therefore, your assessment mostly focuses on comparing one script with that of another. Whereas assessment is not that. Testing is comparison. And therefore, we use norm referencing for evaluating, whereas assessment is about grades and progress. That's why the ministry has recommended us not to go with the scores, but to go with the grades. Don't give them numbers, but give them grades: A plus, B plus, and so on and so forth. Therefore, you have certain criteria based on which we check whether the students have satisfied that criteria or not. So criterion 1, 2, 3, 4, and then if they have met these criteria, then they come in this particular category. So you categorize students and not pit one against the other. So if testing focuses on norm referencing, assessment focuses on criterion referencing. So you only have criteria based on which you assess the students and not compare one student with that of another. These are very important perspectives as far as assessment is concerned, because this criteria in itself should be developed in discussion with the students, and that they should be given the criteria even before they take the test. They should know on what basis they are evaluated altogether. And as far as testing is concerned, it's fixed, whereas assessment is both fixed because it is summative as well, and it is also done anytime. See, an assessment need not be pre-announced. An assessment can happen just like that. If a teacher wants to assess a student at that particular point in time, just without any announcement, a teacher has the freedom to do so. And finally, as far as feedback is concerned, feedback is about numbers. We may have some brief comments here and there, but then it's mostly about numbers. These numbers don't mean anything when it comes to an employment opportunity. We don't be able to decipher what these numbers mean. Only means that the student has got this much of a percentage. Whereas assessment is all about description. Assessment is all about developmental in nature. So sometimes even reflective too. I'll come to that a little later. So therefore, my focus from now on, it will be towards assessment and not towards testing. So these are the principles, basic characteristics of assessment. But then, whereas assessment is concerned, we have got both formative and summative assessment as well. So the reason why I'm just elaborating on this is to make you understand what actually is assessment all about. Most of us use assessment, the very word assessment, without understanding the depth of that particular term, assessment. So therefore, assessment is formative. Assessment can also be summative in nature. And also the reason why I'm explaining it, because portfolio very easily fits the bill as far as assessment is concerned. So looking at the formative and summative assessment, you can see the characteristics of all those under nature, purpose, focus, timing, and feedback. You see that there is a difference in the last three as far as the focus of formative assessment, timing of the formative assessment, and the feedback as compared with that of the summative assessment. Nature and purpose of more or less the same, whereas the focus of formative assessment is to improve the skills of the students, whereas the focus of summative assessment is about measuring the expected outcomes which you already have as part of your syllabus. Whereas time, it is any time, but then summative assessment usually happens at the end, and therefore it is called summative. End of a lesson is usually when we hold the summative assessment. And as far as feedback is concerned, it's elaborate, it's descriptive, and it's developmental, whereas this is summative, is evaluative, and at the same time judgmental in nature, because they judge whether the student lives up to the expectations of the outcomes, the outcomes expected of a student or not. Whereas Formative assessment is not about judging the student. Formative assessment is only to help students develop their language further. So that's again an important distinction we have to know about formative and summative assessment. I was a while ago referring to Professor Emma Matthews, who brought in, Professor Carrie Smith into our classrooms, who talked to us for 2 hours on portfolio assessment. And Professor Emma Matthews, who actually was the dean at Delhi University later, she moved to Delhi University later, in an interview said actually this. I don't know whether you can listen to the audio, but don't worry about it. Actually, the words exactly verbatim, it's already given there, on the screen. This is what she says, that teachers do a lot of work by way of assessment, but I think a lot of it happens to be mini summative assessments. Now, this is a danger that Professor Emma Matthew underlines, that when we say assessment, our focus is more towards summative than towards formative. So the assessments that we conduct in the class, the mid-semester, end-semester assessments we have during which we call assessments, are mostly summative in nature and not formative in nature. I'll let you know why they are summative and not formative in nature, and when we proceed. So understand this carefully, that format assessments are not just summative, and assessments are not actually summative in the sense many summative assessments that happen in a while, but they have to be formative as well. Now, a summative assessment will be like this. That, let's say, for example, you've got some tasks given to them, some tasks on problem solving, some tasks on projects, some tasks on creative writing, any task that you consider important. They are called tasks for a reason. That where communication is more important, where you forget the fact that you are using language, you forget the fact that there are rules that govern the language. Your focus is only to communicate what you have in mind and through which you acquire language. But you see that there is no connection between the first task, which is problem solving, to that of the second task, which is a case study, to that of the third task, which is creative writing, to that of fourth, which is a project, and to that of fifth, which is a role play. Now, it is this disconnect that is a matter of a concern as far as assessment is concerned. That if it has to be formative, then they must be linked. So we have to understand, if they are to be linked, we have to understand the three different purposes of assessment. One is that of assessment of learning. Second is assessment for learning. And the third is assessment as learning. Some of you might have heard of these distinctions of assessment of learning, which is summative in nature, because you assess what has been learned and you take a call on whether the student has achieved what is intended to be achieved. This is meant for the certification process. Mostly the students are they are active, but when we compare it with the assessment for learning as our assessment as learning, then they are comparatively passive in nature. Whereas assessment for learning is not about assessing what they have learned, but assessment for learning is about finding out how we can help our students learn better. So therefore, the assessments that you give are not meant for judging them, but they are meant for diagnostic purposes, where you diagnose the issues the students have, whether you diagnose the strengths and weaknesses of them, and therefore you find ways to improve your input and improve their output as well, or improve your input, improve their intake, and improve their output as well. So therefore, this is about improvement, where students cannot but escape being active in the students have to be active in their classrooms. But the latest development is that of considering assessment as learning. Assessment for learning is about how we can help our students learn better, but assessment as learning has some metacognitive focus. where you try to find out how you can know whether students are learning, or how you can help a student understand his or her own weaknesses. The second assessment for learning is about how teachers understand students better. But the third one is about helping the student to be a bit more reflective and understand themselves much better. But you and I would agree that the third one is much better than that of the first two, where the students themselves can assess and self-assess themselves and find out their strengths and weaknesses. This is about not giving them the fish, but this is about giving them the skills to fish. So that's again the important part. So we have got three different types of assessments. One is that of learning, and the other is for learning, and the third one is as learning, which I think is the way ahead for us, assessment as learning. So we have seen what assessment is. We have also seen how testing differs from that of assessment, and that we have looked at how formative assessment differs from that of summative assessment, and then the three major purposes of assessing. And then I've put assessment as learning as the topmost priority of any teacher. Any teacher of any discipline, for that matter, should be giving importance to in a classroom. Because when your focus is on assessment as learning, and obviously your teaching will also be tuned towards that formative exercise or reflective exercise in a classroom. So if you've got questions, please. I've got one more major part, which is about fixing portfolio into the assessment framework.
So there is a question in the chat box.
Yeah.
Is there any scope to test all the aspects of learning in summative assessment?
Just give me a minute.
Professor Cruz,
Could you please repeat? Could you please repeat?
Is there any scope to test all the aspects of learning in summative assessment?
I think I've already responded to that question, sir.
Okay, sir.
I've already. This
Hello,
is a
sir. Good
last.
evening, sir.
Yeah. Good evening.
How are you, sir? I'm sorry to.
So far, too good.
Yes, sir. Sir, the third point, what you are talking now, assessment, as learning, does it talk about student autonomy or peer assessment, or will that be done by the
It talks
teacher?
about both, sir. It talks about peer assessment. It talks about self-assessment, and thereby giving more importance to autonomous learning.
So, but how do we incorporate that in the classroom?
That's what I'm coming to. The next part is that, sir.
Oh, okay. Okay, sir.
Yeah. Right. Then let me move to the last part. Not last part of it. The last part of the third section, that is about acquisition, about assessment, and about portfolio. Now, as I said, the reason why I spend a lot of time on assessment is that unless we understand assessment, unless we understand the developments in terms of assessment, we won't be able to do justice to whatever we do in the name of assessment in a classroom, whether it is summative or formative in nature. Both of it has its own pros and cons. Both of it has its own purpose altogether. Now, before I merge assessment and portfolio, let me explain what portfolio is all about. Most of you are into art. Most of you who are into commerce would have come across this particular term called portfolio. Portfolio is just nothing but what is there. It's just a collection. But that collection is a purposeful collection, that students purposefully collect something, and that is actually their own product. And this collection is meant to demonstrate their progress in learning. And therefore, you find that this particular collection has its own reflection, and that this collection is not a final collection. This is actually a work in progress. Yeah, so therefore, a portfolio is a work in progress, which is purposefully collected, or rather selected by the students, or selected and collected as well, collected and selected, whichever, because if it is selected, it becomes the showcase portfolio. If it is collected, then it becomes the process portfolio. So therefore, you understand that a portfolio is a collection of whatever students have done by way of assessment in your classrooms. This has got to do with the classroom practices, has got nothing to do with what happens in standardized test or what happens in mid-semester, end semester. Actually, it's high time we did away with the mid-semester and end semesters, because they are actually considered a prelude to the examinations, and therefore kill the very spirit of the assessment altogether. So therefore, this is what portfolio is. And then you find that portfolio would rather look like this. And I tried a portfolio with a kind of an economic portfolio, where I asked the students to get some books and then converted that into a portfolio. But then you've got different types of portfolios, folders, diaries, and things of that, detachable sheets, and so on and so forth. So anybody who is interested can go in for any adapted versions of a portfolio. But then the portfolio, the very idea of portfolio, started in the 1300s, but had nothing to do with education. They just fixed the timeline. You'll find that it started as an artistic feature, where the artists, they used portfolios to showcase their own talents, their own skills, and therefore their best works would be found in that portfolio. So anyone who wants to tell somebody who what they are good at, they need not explain what they are good at. They just had to hand over the portfolio of theirs. This was not used in an educational setup until 1970s, where portfolio entered education as an alternate to testing. Because people are fed up with testing, and people are fed up with the standardization that comes with testing, and we're fed up with actually weeding out of people who have got different skills altogether, and with a very narrow outlook towards assessment practices. So they had to bring in an all-inclusive, they had to bring in a holistic assessment practice. Was the reason why there's a parallel movement of what is called alternate assessment practices, of which portfolio was considered one of the front runners, and that it took a lot of time, and only in 1970s, after communicative language teaching came into existence, portfolio slowly started entering. But the way portfolio was conceived in 1970s is totally different from the way we see portfolio today. So in 1990s, there was a slight shift. This shift has to do with the shift from assessment for learning to assessment as learning to assessment of learning to assessment for learning to assessment as learning in the 1990s, where the shift was towards reflection, the shift was towards competence and not towards knowledge, and the shift was in alignment with constructivism. So therefore, that was the development in 1990s. And in 2000, around 2000, we had e-portfolios. That was when someone said that no, AI has changed the way he or she had taught in the classroom. And therefore, because of the electronic media, we have also got electronic portfolio, which I'm not a very good fan of, but still can be used, because it gives you more scope, because portfolio can be fully realized when you make use of the electronic medium. So therefore, you can have videos, you can have soft copies of it, you can have presentations, you can have websites and different things prepared or produced by our students as part of the portfolio assessment, and they are easily accessible. Also, you need not pay money for that. Any student who has a system or a mobile phone can easily have his or her own portfolio. So therefore, it's economical and it's easily accessible too. And today, portfolio is slightly different, because we know that now there's a lot of effort going into something called lifelong learning. We call it as learnability skills. As therefore, portfolios are geared towards helping students with assistance towards lifelong learning, and that instead of only carrying a certificate stating that someone has completed a course with distinction, first class, or second or third, and things of that kind, which are not informative at all. We say that no, formative assessment is also informative assessment, and that informative assessment actually should aim at giving more information to the student, and definitely to also the prospective employers at the end. So portfolio can serve as that informative document which a student can carry along with the certificate, which has only the marks, which don't mean anything, because you and I know for sure that the marks we give the students are highly inflated. Inflated in the sense that a student who gets 70% can hardly write a paragraph on his or her own without any mistakes. Which means, what does that 70% mean? It means nothing. And therefore, anyone who looks at the marks won't be able to make any sense out of it altogether. Only sense that we can make is that it's first class. That's all. Nothing else we get out of it, unless we invest some time in getting to know what the competence of that student is as far as language is concerned. So therefore, portfolio today serves as a career portfolio, where a student can easily carry a portfolio that he or she prepared during the course of study. So it, to a large extent, documents the progress of a student, the struggles of a student, the development of a student, and by far the interests, skills that the student possesses. So therefore, that's what portfolio can do in the educational scenario. So bringing them all together, you can find that the shift is quite interesting, and this shift is quite meaningful in today's scenario too. Meaningful in a sense that we make students accountable to their own learning, be conscious in the sense, be aware of their own learning, where, as I already said, it is about thinking about learning, learning about learning. That's something that's the best skill that one can give to a student. Because you might have seen that students who study in school struggle to cope with the demands of the higher education, because the skill sets that are expected of students in colleges are totally different from that of the skills in schools. Not all schools, but there are schools that excel well as far as skill development is concerned. That transition, those students transition is quite easier. But then students who have teachers whose instruction are mark driven, then they'll find it very difficult to accommodate to the changes that befall in the colleges. So this is the timeline in which portfolio has evolved over a period of time. There are different types of portfolios, and there are different nomenclatures used for these portfolios as well. I have taken these four types, that is working, developmental, showcase, and assessment portfolio. Now, as far as working portfolio is concerned, you can see that it is actually a document over a period of time, which has got a lot of drafts, revisions the students have gone through, their reflections of theirs, and the feedback of that of the peers and teachers. A developmental portfolio is actually a kind of a selection where the evidence of growth is seen in that portfolio, where they can pick products of theirs to show how growth is evident in these portfolios. And of course, it's selective for the reason that it is the student who chooses to manifest, to showcase. That's not showcasing their talent, but showcasing their progress, and therefore it is called developmental portfolio. And the third is the showcase portfolio, because usually portfolios have a day where they showcase their best products. But I think last semester we had a showcase of the of advertisements and videos prepared by students based on the textbook prescribed for general English, and an external member was invited to be part of that assessment, though it was actually meant to be highly internal too, just for the feel of it, that there's someone external who is there to assess them. So therefore, that's again the showcase. This showcases the best product of the students. And the best is not chosen by the teacher or somebody else, it's only the student, which again is a learning process by selecting the best out of those pieces that a student has produced, be it written, be it a documented speech, be it a video, yeah, as a group, edited and scripted, and all those were part of that. However, this only includes the best, which is in fact the polished version of the portfolios that they produced. And finally, the assessment portfolio, where grading is important, but the grading is mostly in alignment with the expected course outcomes. But this again, since it involves assessment, the teacher to some extent can guide the student choose the best ones all together. So these are the 4 different types of portfolio, and any student will start with a working portfolio, progress towards developmental portfolio, and finally end with a showcase portfolio, which is the portfolio that can later be considered the career portfolio. And the portfolio meant for assessment can be picked and chosen from the showcase portfolio, which will be maintained by arguably by the teacher, if at all the teacher deems a document is essential, which is meaningless to hold a document in the department or with the staff, because the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Therefore, anybody who gives a job, they have their own showcase portfolio, and they can also showcase their talent later, as part of the interview. So all of that is there, except for that those numbers they get in assessment don't mean anything. So that's why it's about grading, and it's about giving them the description that the student needs and the employer needs later about the student. There are some components that a portfolio has, and these are the components of a portfolio, starting with the table of contents, the learning objectives, the specific skills the tasks are intended to test, and the response to those tasks. The tasks are not one, but the tasks are many, and the students should be given the freedom to choose from, and then they go ahead with their own, with their own positives, what they are good at. And you've got learner reflections, teacher peer feedback, which I think a peer feedback is an important aspect, because when a peer gives a feedback to another student, that student also learns from the other and gets to compare himself or herself with the other student as well. You have to have a self-assessment checklist, and then the assessment criteria rubrics and evidence for growth over a period of time, and the final review by the teacher and the grading sheet. So these are the things that are expected of a portfolio altogether. Now, in today's context, given the fact that the AI has grown, to unimaginable heights, that you can make all these very easily. Just give a prompt, and that you get anything that you want. Things that took weeks for us to prepare, you get it in 1 minute because of AI. So therefore, using a portfolio in a classroom, preparing rubrics, preparing the criteria for assessment, and then having a discussion with the student along with the criteria and all the other things, even designing a task, all of which are very quite easy today than it was before. So therefore, portfolio, if it was difficult earlier, because there are many difficulties cited in many studies about use of portfolio, but today those difficulties are not difficulties anymore. So you have to your left what a portfolio is, and to your right what assessment is all about. And if you look at these two, you would easily find that they are born for each other. Looks as if the understanding of assessment can to a large extent be achieved through the introduction of portfolio. So that takes us to what we call portfolio assessment. So portfolio assessment is a combination of summative and formative assessments meant to evaluate primarily the students' learning altogether. So it's about assessment of learning rather than the assessment of outcome. But of course, the outcome comes when summative assessment comes into play, which again is part and parcel of the portfolio assessment. And of course, as I already said, curated, collection. Uh, that standard testimony, A, to their efforts, B, to the skills that they have acquired, and 3, the progress they have made, and then their reflective practices and the achievements in alignment with the outcomes. So you find that uh, uh, a perfect a perfect model that a teacher can adopt in a classroom to do justice to assessment in a classroom can be portfolio assessment. So the key features which have all been discussed under assessment, that A, it is continuous, B, it is developmental, and it is highly authentic in nature, that the communication that takes place actually is not truncated into caricatures of realia, but they are actually the authentic communication that takes place, where they are given scenarios where they communicate in a way they communicate outside the classroom, and they are very reflective, outcome based, and then they are evidence driven. They are evidence driven because of the simple reason that anything that happens in the classroom is documented, any feedback given to the student is documented, any progress that student has made based on the feedback of both of peer and the staff again is documented, and that anything that is showcased is his or her own product. So everything of what a student has done over a period of time is documented for a semester, and it is there for them. So you cannot say that you cannot the growth cannot be seen, but the growth can be seen if you just look at the history of their own process of using portfolios in their classrooms. But unfortunately there are institutions which don't even give the answer scripts back to the students as conducted as part of continuous assessment. There are institutions which don't give back their answer. They give the answer scripts to the students and get back the answer scripts immediately after, which is against the very spirit of continuous assessment. So that's important. Therefore, the teacher is held accountable for what happens in the class. A student also is made to take the learning on their own stride. So therefore, there are a lot of things that happen if you use portfolio assessment the way it has to be used in the classroom. These are some of the sample tasks, not only meant for curated for portfolio assessments, but these are very generic tasks. But the only interesting part is that any tasks that we have in literature in the sense literature of language acquisition, can easily be used as part of portfolio assessment, because such flexibility the portfolio assessment has, and therefore you can use it. I was just talking about the disconnect we have as far as summative assessment is concerned, and that can easily be connected through portfolio assessment. That there will be a connect between the first, second, third, fourth, or n number of tasks that you make use of in a classroom, because there is always an evidence of students learning from the previous task and then bringing it forward to the next task. So that's the beauty of portfolio assessment. And you can, if you think that it can be tweaked a little more, that you can have a major task and can have many other minor tasks which demands different other skills. And portfolio can mostly also recommends or encourages cooperative learning in a class, where if you've got problem solving, creative writing, and role play case study as part of the project given to them, then project is the main task that they do. But whereas through this project, all these 4 sub tasks are given, or skills are even assessed as well. You can bring in any different tasks from the line of tasks that you have got in literature. So that's something that is quite interesting about portfolio assessment. Some of the advantages: one, portfolio assessment captures the authentic use of language, because the tasks given are authentic, and that it supports you know, variety, uh, accommodates variety and acknowledges them, that there is different types. There are different types of students. It's not only multiple intelligence is not the only type we have, or only uh, uh, only perspective we have as far as variety is concerned or diversity is concerned. We have got at least 4 different ways in which we diversify students, which comes under differentiated education. Again, is coming up very strongly in the educational arena. And these are, again, all very important advantages of it, which either directly or indirectly I've already discussed under portfolio assessment or assessment in particular. So we've seen the evolution of portfolio, different types of portfolio, and the important components of portfolio, and some key features of portfolios, and the tasks that you can use in a classroom, and the advantages of portfolio assessment. Any questions? I'll skip this particular part because we'll have the Q&A towards the end of it, since I'm running out of time. This is just a sample, not a real sample of my students' portfolio. I wish I had that time to get the portfolios that my students produced in the previous semesters, but I could not because of the Pongal celebration, only during which I started this particular preparing the slides. It just occurred to me that I wish I had met them earlier and got their portfolios. Not only today I met them, and I wasn't in a position to incorporate all that. So therefore, I thought I could just have a portfolio of a site, so whatever little I had as soft copies, which I thought interesting for my own self. I've just used this is table of contents. I started this semester, not of last semester, but this semester I started the portfolio part with getting a feedback from the previous semester. So therefore, just imagine this is one of the ones that I got previously. I asked the students to prepare a meme based on what they liked and didn't like about my class. So I really liked this particular meme where the student that talked about it's actually a very wonderful comment on group discussion in a classroom that I in the class in the general English classrooms I hold. This is about me. Actually, I did give them an opportunity to even talk about me as well. But since I'm a little strict about punctuality, this is what the student has come out with. There are 2 things happening here. See, one is that of creativity. This was actually done as part of one of my PhD scholars whose thesis is on business memes, where the visuals are given to the students, and the students came up with some memes. Some of the memes actually, were so creative. So one is the memes are creative, and two, that they have made use of language for the memes, and which is my focus. So you might have seen that both the memes have got enough potential for feedback, so that they can learn from these from the errors that they have committed or mistakes they have committed in these memes. So again, a few more. This is from a textbook which was actually co-authored by my own colleagues in the department, because I teach them this textbook now as part of the general English program, and these are the products of which for this. It was so wonderful. They came up with they collected uh, uh, newspaper clippings from. I have got the soft copy. I did manage to scan some of which, but unfortunately did not have time to incorporate them here, so that you could get the authentic material in front of you as a part of portfolios. That I asked them to go through the those notes were the tasks that I had quickly written down, which later on were given to them. They were asked to go through the what is called the scripts, the newspapers, and find out how women are portrayed in newspapers, in the media. So they came up with wonderful findings. They were asked to come up with advertisements of their own, sensitizing people on how we treat women, especially in media and so on and so forth. And the second lesson is about the side effects of tobacco, and they came up with an exceptional, video. One, not one, but then they were put in groups of four, and then each one contributed. Some edited, some wrote the script, some directed it, some did the cinematography. It's so wonderful. That's just the one I was referring to as the showcase portfolio. So the learner reflections. This might not take much of a time of yours. That if you could use AI to get you a customized, document to profile. So these are some of the things that you can have as part of the portfolio, where students go through these questions and answer, but through answering they also acquire language. So all these are part and parcel of the portfolios that you can have. So with that, probably I'll skip all these. All these are self-assessment sheets. You can also have the grading criteria. This only is a skeleton of it. Each one has its own criteria given level-wise, and then you can assess them based on that. So I hope I have taken a few more minutes of yours. So if there are questions, please feel free to clarify them. Just go ahead. You can have, hopefully the organizers can afford 3 to 5 minutes for the final Q&A.
Yes, sir, definitely, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, I anticipated this question from Mr. Saravanan. That is it possible to manage portfolios in a large classroom? That's again without compromising on quality. As I said, see, after AI has come into play, everything is possible. There isn't anything called impossible as far as assessment is concerned, because going through the portfolios of our students is definitely a tedious task. What you can do is to get the e-copy of it. This is what I do, that I make a student in charge of it. Whatever they have written, they should also have a soft copy of it. And all the copies of the students will be sent as a Word file to me as one document along with the department numbers. Trust me, doesn't take more than 5 minutes to assess their language because of AI. You need not even go to any other AI. Just the AI which is open access, which is easily available to us. They do the job for us. They just give the prompt. They'll get you what you want. I think you given, I don't know how old you are, but then if you are young enough, then you might be in a better position than I am as far as use of technology is concerned. So today you cannot give time as an excuse and large classroom as an excuse because technology does it for you.
Sir, given this AI, so don't you think that even plagiarized material can also get inside their portfolios, and how do we check their authenticity?
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It happens under your watch. Plagiarism check can be done using AI. So AI helps you check with plagiarism too.
But the smarter ones, they do use another AI to do against the
Humanize it.
plagiarism. Yes, humanize
Humanize
it.
it.
Yeah.
Then we are much better than AI. See, a teacher
Mm.
knows. That's what I'm saying. See, this is not a one-off.
Mhm.
This is actually a progress. We know our students. We know very well our students that this is what my student is capable of producing, A. And that if there are stylistic variations within the script, a teacher can easily understand, and even AI can easily understand. But even humanizing AI can be detected too. So therefore, AI is there for both.
No, even in CBSE schools, we do have portfolios actually for
Yeah,
5 mark internal assessment we have.
true, true.
But the way we assess is if a child has even a file or a
Hmm.
portfolio, we give them 5 marks.
Hmm.
I am talking of the practicality here. We don't
Okay.
even assess them. If they submit, we give them marks.
Yeah, we don't even assess them for two reasons. One, these portfolios are not portfolios. To be frank enough, we call them portfolios, but they are not portfolios. They are just some document of summative assessments, and they don't have any other purpose other than that. As I have already said, that our understanding of assessment must change, that this actually should be considered an evidence for career. And therefore, see, we fondly keep our own scripts, which we received decades ago. But just imagine a student's portfolio, if he or she can manage to, keep it for himself or herself for quite a long time, what kind of a feeling and learning experience, progress he or she can actually see. That is one. And two, that you don't assess does not only happen with portfolio, it happens with all the assessments we collect from our students. Yes or no, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it happens with the script also. It happens with the exam script also. We only just, superficially go through the scripts and take a wild guess as to this is what students deserve. But portfolio in the purest sense, and given that's what I'm saying, the technology helps us get it much better, that you need not even go through. Technology does it for you. And the feedback can be given by technology. All that you can do is to quickly go through it for 1 minute, and then whatever corrections you feel like making, make it and give it to the student, so that he or she continues with the feedback. It's not that of one off and then there's no connection, but it just progresses from one task to another, one draft to another draft. So therefore, I think personally, I haven't found it. One of the reasons why I could not implement it earlier was that it was quite taxing to go through the portfolios of the students. But now that we've got technology, it's very easy. And two, very important one, uh, why is it that teachers alone can use AI? Why not students? The minutes we write, the drafts we make, the articles we publish, to a large extent, we make the best use of AI, don't we, sir?
Yes, sir. But that eases our job. Yes. But
That
if student that eases our job, but if we ask the students to use, then their creativity will be killed. That's what we
I
feel.
don't know. As of now, it's too early. There are studies to say that AI is killing the creativity of the students, but that's what people said when calculators were introduced. Probably, the understanding of creativity would change, sir. The way we look at creativity is a conventional way of looking at creativity. But I would say that a student with AI will be more creative than a student without AI. Trust me, sir.
Yeah.
So the expectations of expectations of what is expected of a creative brain will change because of AI. So we tune our brain according to the information, according to the technology available in front of us. I think 2 years back, one of the students from CFL interviewed me. One of the questions asked was, "What is your take on AI?" And I said that AI is going to and help me do things which I could not do earlier. And AI is going to save a lot of time of mine, preparatory time of mine. And the student was shocked, and he said that, "Sir, I'm shocked to know that you are highly positive about AI." I think we'll have to take a positive step towards the use of AI. I do understand that students might lose the writing skill. But then, when computers were introduced, this was what we said, that computers are doing the proofreading for us. Computers, the spelling would die. Why should I learn the spelling of a language when that's not required of me? Today, I need not learn the spelling of a language. Why should I? Is a question that I have to ask. But of course, it comes at the expense of that particular part of a brain that helps with the spelling part. But then there are many other things that we learn, and our brain is triggered because of AI too. So I think we should have a little more, should be a little more accommodative towards AI, and as of now can also look at positive. It has its own pros and cons. But as a teacher, I think AI is going to be the next step forward. And so you cannot, just the way mobiles are, you cannot prevent students from using AI. Yes.
Thank you,
So we'll have to
sir.
find ways to help students do things. Of course, there is a difference. We teachers have already gone through the learning process. Students are right now in the process of learning, but still let them learn through the use of AI, because that again is part and parcel of their future life. After having gone through the learning process of language without AI, and after having spent years writing, I don't know, somehow today we cannot write without AI. If that is the case with us, just imagine the mindset of the students.
Yes, sir.
So we'll have to consider it as an add-on, not as a replacement. It's an add-on to our students. Let them take mileage out of the technology they have in front of us, in front of them. Yeah. Students can learn language even through a plagiarized text.
Provided if they read the text.
Pardon me?
Provided if they read the text.
Why should they read?
Without reading, if they submit, how are they going to
See,
learn, sir?
I don't know. I think we shall have the discussion of this
Legends.
off record, because even before AI got its own space, many of us were not reading the original text. Let's not blame it on AI.
No, but at least that
different thing
text.
altogether.
Okay. Yes, yes.
So this is not about AI. This is about the mindset.
Mindset, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
That's a good question, sir. Mr. Saravanan, portfolio tends to become subjective. Obviously, yes. But then what is not subjective today? Can you tell one thing that is not subjective?
Yeah.
The syllabus is subjective because it is the priority of the teacher and the external expert. The book we write is subjective. The choice of subjects, topics, everything is because of the writers or because of from the authors. Let's take the most objective test, the multiple choice questions. Is it subjective or objective? We call it as objective type questions. Are the multiple choice questions, it may be open the question to all. Are the multiple choice questions objective questions or subjective questions? Anyone as a representative, the others can respond to it. Are the MCQs subjective or objective?
Never asked that question, sir.
Right. Actually, it is subjective. So we call it objective for very other reasons. But then there is an amount of subjectivity even in the MCQ, because the choice of questions and the choice of options given is highly subjective. If someone else takes the question paper, it won't be the same question paper. It will be a different question paper altogether. So therefore, there is some amount of subjectivity even in the objective type of questions. So therefore, but the advantage of portfolio assessment is that you can be subjective, but the evidence is there for all to see, which should make you a little more conscious of your subjectivity, unlike the other ones. Because the proof is there for the student. Therefore, you tend to be a little more cautious when it comes to be a bit biased towards somebody. Welcome, sir.
Yes, are there any questions? Dear participants, you can raise it now.
And I wish I shortened the initial parts and gave more importance to portfolio assessment. But the reason why I gave more importance to that was that only if we understand assessment, the foundations of it, that you can do justice to portfolio assessment was the reason I did that. But somehow I feel that that could have been truncated a little bit to accommodate more of portfolio assessment. Portfolio assessment is not new, as I said. So therefore, your perspective towards assessment has to change. That should be a new you when you enter a classroom and assess your students. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I've been so cordial, so interactive, and the questions have been wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and a word of thanks to the organizers, to the department, to the management, and especially to Mr. Dr. Peter Prabhu. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So thank you, sir. Thanks for your elaborate and meticulous presentation. Let me now invite Ms. Ume Abiba, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to formally propose the vote of thanks. Madam, over to you.
The PG and Research Department of English, Sacred Heart College, expresses its heartfelt gratitude to all those who participated to the successful conduct of the 5-day faculty development program. I express my profound gratitude to our patron, Reverend Dr. P. Praveen Peter, Secretary, for his constant support. I sincerely thank our co-patrons, Reverend Dr. D. Maria Anthony Raj, Principal, and Reverend Dr. G. Theophil Anand, Additional Principal, for their valuable guidance and support. My heartfelt thanks to the conveners, Professor N. Aruldas and Dr. D. Mary Jennifer, for their academic leadership, meticulous planning, and dedication in organizing the program. I also extend my sincere appreciation to the organizing secretaries, Professor V. Madan Kumar and Professor S. Saravanan, for their committed efforts and efficient coordination, which ensured the smooth execution of the program. I gratefully acknowledge Professor S. Saravanan for the beginning the program with a soulful prayer song, setting a calm and reflective tone of the session. I sincerely thank Professor V. Madan Kumar for delivering the welcome address and setting a clear and engaging tone for the inaugural session. I express my special thanks to Dr. A. Peter Conscious Prabhu for introducing the resource person and for his effective coordination of the inaugural proceedings. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Professor N. Aruldas, Head Department of English Shift 1, for delivering an impactful and insightful inaugural address, highlighting the theme of the FDP and emphasizing the vital role of assessment in effective teaching and meaningful language acquisition. My heartfelt thanks to Dr. J. John Lovejoy, Associate Professor, St. Joseph College, Trichy, the resource person, for his highly insightful and engaging session on portfolio assessment for language acquisition. His emphasis on assessment as an integral part of teaching and learning, enriched with quotations, visual images, an interactive Q&A session, and the memorable story of his students' drawing made the session both meaningful and enlightening. I also thank all the participants, organizing committee members, and the technical team for their active participants and cooperation, which contributed greatly to the success of the session. Once again, I extend my sincere thanks to everyone who made the first day of the FDP a meaningful, enriching, and successful one.
Thank you, madam. It was indeed a wonderful session. I sincerely thank the participants for their cooperation all through the session, and kindly fill the feedback form and attendance link, which is sent to you in the chat box. And today we will join at the same time, and tomorrow, sorry, we will join at the same time for the second day of the FDP. Thank you, dear all. Thank you.
Before we conclude for today's session, a few essential reminders for our participants. The link for day one feedback has been posted in the chat box. Please fill it within the next 30 minutes. The second thing, when you join for the upcoming session, please ensure your joining name includes your full name and institution name for our records. And third, many of them has posted your questions in the YouTube channel. Will also surely forward the same thing to the speaker. He will respond and will share the same thing in the groups, WhatsApp group. So once again, a heartfelt thank you to Dr. J. John Lovejoy and all the faculty members and scholars who have joined us today. We wish you all a wonderful evening. Thank you. The meeting
Thanks,
link
sirs.
will
Thank
remain
you all.
active. Sorry, sir.
I just wanted to thank everybody. Thank you,
Sure.
sir. Thank you.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye, sir. The meeting link will remain active for 5 more minutes for your access to the feedback link. See you all tomorrow. Good night.